Well, this has helped me. Hello. Welcome to the STIR group in IETF 123. We're right on time, I think. So we'll start with the chair slides. Note well that this is an IETF meeting, and this slide is a reminder. It's really a bunch of pointers, but it's about the rights, privileges, and responsibilities that you have if you're going to participate. Please treat each other with professional respect. And I have chaired a couple of real interesting food fights this week. I'm not expecting one in here, but regardless, it's treat each other respectfully and we won't have a problem on that front. Meeting tips, make sure you join the Meetico. We wouldn't want to get a warmer room next time, but you need to know how many people are here. This is also how we will manage the queue. So if you don't join the Meetico room, you can't get in line for the microphone. We finally have RFC 9795 on RCD. We have a couple documents with the ISG right now. One is approved, waiting AD follow-up. I don't know what we're waiting for, Ori. Can you make sure whoever the action holder is knows what the action is? Can you tell us? He's looking it up. STIR.
Russ, I think we still need a note taker.
OB.
Want me to do it?
Hi, Ori Steele, your responsible area director. I think OOB is just waiting for back and forth between John and Med. I've been trying to coordinate just to make sure all the comments are cleared.
Okay, so John thinks he's done. We're waiting for Med to act.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Pretty much. I think that's it.
all right. And 4916 update has discussed to be sorted out. I'm unaware that we're waiting on any working group action there. I think it's just the authors. And we have certificates OCSP in IETF last call. We have one that is finished with the working group last call, which is certificate short-lived. And we're just waiting the Shepherd's write-up, which Ben has the action on that one, I believe. Is that correct?
Hi, can people hear me?
Yes.
Do we have a note taker?
Will one of you please volunteer to take notes? Somebody. Thank you. Greatly appreciate that. All right. Thank you, Ben. We were, some of us were running from a previous over lunch meeting. So there was no reason to note take the status update there. So the agenda today is the Chris Wentz show, it appears. These are all yet to be adopted documents. And so I believe he's going to try and convince you that we ought to adopt.
Hey, just AD interrupt. What I said at the mic here before was incorrect. Med's already cleared it with me, so I'm going to release the document.
Ah, perfect.
Thanks.
That's even better.
Or he still is responsible AD.
The still responsible. Okay. So are there any agenda bashes?
What?
What
The one
draft are we talking about?
The one that came up this morning.
So Russ,
John Peterson with NQ, the agenda batch, the IT quote fix draft, the 85, 88. If you're AOV it, we've got.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess we decided to talk about that on the list, or I guess if we have time, we can talk about it.
If we get it to AOB, we'll, okay.
are we talking about the Addis reference?
Right.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I think that Mary is probably not with us today, and she's the one that put out the draft. So I don't know how much we can talk about here. I would propose this go to the mailing list.
Okay.
I am a co-author, but I can briefly talk about it.
Okay.
Okay. So no additional agenda bashes other than that one we'll do with AOB, assuming there's time. Okay. CT is first, right?
Right. So certificate transparency. We did an update last 122 meeting. We had a vigorous discussion about things. I think the output of that was to make it very explicit that this is not, well, let me follow my slides actually. We made it very explicit that we're not trying to redefine anything with 69, 62. It's really just making a stir version profile of it, if you want to call it that. It's really about, not using it in the context of TLS, but using it in the context of delegate certificate, stir certificates. And only focusing on those delta usage. We still have some guidance on, what happens to generally describe the roles specific to stir and what they're supposed to be doing, what you do at the verification service, things like that. But anything beyond that is essentially references to 6962. So I think we accomplished that in this version of the draft. And that seemed to be the direction that things were going, that as long as we did that, then that became more acceptable. So I guess I wanted to have the discussion is, did we achieve that? And did we get close enough for adoption?
So I personally have been struggling with understanding the threat you're trying to squash. What happened in the web PKI is a particular CA that was in all the browser trust stores issued a certificate for google.com that google.com knew nothing about. What is the equivalent thing you're afraid that a CA will do that the verification service will detect?
Yeah, so I think the idea is the prevention of misissuance, whether it's using misissuance of the SBC code, which hopefully is not a huge threat vector, but I think is a non-zero chance of happening. The other thing that I think there's a larger than non-zero threat of happening is that somebody validates a telephone number incorrectly, either for legitimate or illegitimate reasons, and you can create a certificate believing that, and so therefore having some way of monitoring the ecosystem, monitoring the issuance of certificates would allow you to provide some way of disputing that certificate that you as the number holder or you as the SBC holder are the rightful owner, and you're not aware of why that certificate was created.
Okay, so in the first case, you were saying someone got a TN auth token and um, issued a certificate that included a different SPC code.
Either the authority that was associated made a mistake, whether intentionally or not intentionally, um, or yes, the CA was implicit in, you know,
Okay. All right.
doing spoofing or fraudulent
All right.
things.
The second case I get.
Yeah.
All right. John?
Yeah, I mean, the second case we're talking about is a subordinate certification authority and the issuance of like multiple certificates for the same telephone number, for example. Or, I mean, the questions, and Chris and I had a very lengthy conversation about this yesterday, as we have several times in the past. I mean, I too, there are places here I kind of struggle with, okay, what exactly is a verification service going to do differently, right? Based on access to this, and I can certainly imagine deployment environments in which this would be useful, and others in which I'd be concerned based on what the policies are for what verification services are supposed to do with it. But at the end of the day, as a tool, the concept that there should be the ability to create ledgers, especially for the SCA cases, which we will not be as tightly governed as we imagine, like the standard authority tokens for OCNs would be. Like I can certainly see the overall rationale for specifying a way to do that, especially for TN-based certs. And I just hope that the bodies that go on to utilize this do this in a way that is responsible and does not squash competition, because there are plenty of ways I can imagine it would be used for that precise purpose.
Correct. I'm not totally convinced that you can squash competition, because I think you're being more transparent. But I agree with your premise for sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to relitigate the previous conversations we've had about this here too much. But again, my concern is much more that in a pluralist environment where there are multiple entities that could be eligible to generate a certificate for a telephone number, taking, for example, a TNSP who is a carrier and something like a WhatsApp or a provider like that. If there are policies that look at the ledgers of the generation of these things and require verification services to favor one or the other. These are the kinds of cases, right, that I have in mind.
Correct.
And it's really just, is this a new way of canonicalizing in, what we don't have a deployment environment for yet, right? We don't really have an SCA environment with telephone number based certificates out there.
Right.
There are certainly going to be people who feel quite threatened by it, right? And I can see ways that this could be leveraged in order to make sure that only certain classes of entities are really going to be paid attention to if they generate certificates for this, which is, to Russ's original point, very different from the original CT use case in the web PKI.
Absolutely.
But I think that's policy is going to be governed by who can delegate versus the transparency service.
Well, it ain't going to be determined here. That's the problem.
Oh yeah,
we're going to make a munition.
No question.
And somebody's gonna go use that in whatever way they see fit. And I things like that can make me nervous, but at the end of the day, it's hard for me to refute the overall argument that having ledgers that are going to record the issuance of certificates for this is innately a bad thing. Just the ways that people might leverage it could be.
Okay, wonderful.
Ben.
So, kind of commenting on John's point, it seems like we already have a lot of ways people could do that sort of discrimination. So I don't know if I believe this adds a new problem there. But the actual question I came to bring up is, Chris, think I saw a brief mention of transparency in Vesper. Is this a dependency for Vesper?
Currently, we make it part of it because we think that that will help for the reasons I stated. Is it a hard dependency? Maybe not, but I think we'd like to make it part of that.
So if I bring that up because that means they're kind of commingled when we start talking about working group adoption.
Right. I mean, obviously, if we don't adopt this, then I would reconsider having that in Vesper. But I would like that to happen.
Sean?
Hi, Sean Turner. That is really weird. We talked a little bit about this. I share some of Russ's and John's concerns because I don't know, right? Like you could use this stuff. But the problem is that from the practical perspective, right? It's not just like just use CT. You're going to be putting some signatures in the certificate, and they're going to get bigger, right? And then you might have to do all the other things that they have to do, depending upon how big this thing gets, to try to make sure you do all the things that fix all the problems with CT, right? That the web has found. And so you end up having like, are you going to do consistency checks? There's a bunch of other things that they can look at, and it just kind of, is there some other way we could use? Because you're specifically saying ledgers, not CT, right? And so is there some other way we could do this requirement without doing that? And again, I understand like it's really like, well, the web guys did it. It's everywhere. I get all kinds of great tools for it and it works. But if there's some other, if the requirement is fairly simple, if there's some other easier mechanism, maybe we don't have to eat the dog food.
I don't know. I'd prefer not to define something new.
But yeah, I mean, we did this whole exercise, I did for like an hour yesterday, going around the maple on this of what revocation, especially centralized revocation, and the way that Chaikin operates, what the properties of that are that are different from how practically a VS would interact with this, right? In the sense of, you imagine there's somebody who, for all the SCAs, it's their job to like pool all the certificate revocations and then broadcast those down to verification servers. It in fact works a bit more, Sean, like the way Chrome works, where instead of actually doing CT, like they're pushing tons of CRLs down with like every Chrome update, like, determine what the certificates are you're not supposed to listen to. And so, I hesitate to go back and say we need to do a requirements phase and figure out what it is we're actually trying to do here on this. Again, because like I said, I can kind of see the value in being able to have a non-repudiable like record of the SCAs that generated certificates and when they did so, just for forensic purposes, especially because so much of Chaikin is actually forensic rather than real-time decisioning on the part of the VSs. But if we're trying to get past some of that and get closer to what a real-time verification system should look like, I mean, there are alternative designs that I think accomplish something that's indiscernible to me that requires no new thing to be defined here.
I think transparency could be, it wouldn't have to be mandated that everybody does it. It could be a piece of information that it was on a transparency log, and maybe that tells you that something that maybe you could trust it more than others. I don't know. But I think revocation is different because you must follow the revocation. Well, I don't know, maybe that could be considered recommendation, but I don't think anybody says that.
Yeah, I mean, but it's 2 of one, half dozen of the other. If there's no corresponding certificate in any ledger that you can see as a relying party, it's your obligation, like not to validate the call, which is surely what the policy would be for something like this, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, it's the inverse property, but it seems to require like all the same infrastructure to generate it and to accomplish much the same effect. This is the difference between an allow list and a deny list, right? Just in the way that the architecture is defined. We've already built a deny list that does this.
Alec?
I think there are two potential values. I think, Chris, you kind of highlighted one of them. But within
Can you
the
get
shaken,
closer to your microphone?
can you hear me better now?
It's faint.
Let's see.
He is fine
I
online.
I turned up my mic volume as loud as it goes.
Okay.
I'll try and speak loudly. So I think there are two values specifically within the shaken ecosystem that is in use in the U.S. and Canada today of certificate transparency, and the first is thing that's kind of necessary to understand is that currently verification services, when they receive a passport and phone call that they're going to verify, one of the most important things that they do to identify how to treat the call is to look at who signed the call, look at the service provider code, the OCN, whatever you want to call it, that signed the call, and that's identified in the certificate. And this creates a incentive for a party that would like to make calls that are unwanted or illegal, some bad calls, to get a certificate that has someone else's service provider code so that their calls aren't labeled as spam or blocked or treated in the way that they are, because it appears as if they're signed by somebody more trustworthy. And so what certificate transparency can do, now that we've established that there's an incentive for people to get a certificate with someone else's OCN, is it can identify if that happens. A log, and in fact, in the shaken world where you have a central authority, even a single log can be operated by the central authority that operates, as the root of trust that issues the service provider code tokens, so that all of the service providers, relaying parties, they can monitor that log to see if someone requested and got a certificate with their service provider code in it. And not only does it detect if a certificate authority were to not get a service provider code token and issue a certificate, but also if, at least in a non-malicious way, assuming the log is operated by the central authority, if the central authority were to mistakenly issue a service provider code token to someone they shouldn't. Obviously, if you don't trust the central authority, you would need a separate party to run the log. But I think it provides two important values, even within the shaken ecosystem. And then obviously it goes on for more for SCAs with delegate certificates.
John Peterson again. Yeah, that's useful, Alec. I mean, I guess I thought this was more about the potential for future delegate certs and things like that, precisely because, I mean, there's such top-down controls, like the issuance of authority tokens themselves, like before you can even get certificates. There's lots of like alternative points of, I mean, literally centralized control over that. So, I mean, this would be a rogue CA. Well, I mean, it's not even a rogue seat. I mean, who does that?
Yes.
Okay,
Or,
A rogue CA.
CA
or a
actually issues
stolen SBC token or something like that.
stolen SBC token. Okay.
But I mean, a rogue CA is a significant concern. I mean, these certificates, other than the parties in the call path who aren't probably looking at it, and the end-to-end, the terminating service provider, no one else is even looking at or aware of these certificates. So if a rogue CA were to issue a certificate for, I'll just use AT&T's name, AT&T's with AT&T's service provider code in it, to someone that's not AT&T, AT&T may have no knowledge that this occurred. The PA may have no knowledge that this has occurred. Only the CA and the terminating service providers who receive those calls would ever see the certificate.
Yeah.
With-
Certainly true. I mean, again, we're always looking at the analogies to the web PKI here. I mean, the web PKI cases where this has occurred, have occurred because like the CAB forum and the entities are responsible for determining what the set of CAs are that are eligible to issue certificates that browsers actually trust. I would say is has nothing like the top-down oversight that the issuances have for the CP of like, either the US or Canada's like systems for this. But Yeah, I certainly get it as use case. I just assumed this is entirely about the other like subordinate CA use case.
Well, that's because you talked to me more than Alex.
I see. Okay, yeah.
we were. I mean, I agree with Alex's use case as well, but
Sean?
Sean Turner and I realize I'm being completely pedantic here, but if you do audits later, you would be able to find out that there was a rogue there was a rogue CA, but you wouldn't know until you did that audit. So there was a window at the end where you'd find out, but it definitely wouldn't be done during call setup.
Okay, I guess the remaining question is, does anyone object to a call for adoption? Okay,
okay.
do you have more slides?
I do not. I do not. Not for this one. Thank you. The next one is
I think I have to take the clicker back to fix this. No,
right. Anyways, I can start. The next one is JWT claim constraints. I actually presented that this is actually an ACME draft, not a STIR draft, but I want to keep the experts in STIR aware of what we're doing there, although many were in attendance there as well. So as I explained last time, hopefully most people are aware of this. We have an authority token for TN auth list, but 8226 defines two certificate extensions for STIR. The second one being JWT claim constraints. We never created an authority token profile, so wanted to fix that, especially in the context of potential usage with like RCD or other things. Probably mostly in the context of delegate certs. Maybe there's other reasons to do it. I think I went through this. The new thing here is we have two challenge types, two extensions. So mainly my question to the ACME group was, did we interpret that correctly and how it's used? I think I got thumbs up mostly that we did interpret that correctly. But I think there's some interesting details in here that might be useful to go through. So this is just the authority token itself, which I don't think there's much controversy about. It's really the TK value is now a JWT claim constraint instead of a TN auth list. Everything else sort of works the same. This is the request that we define in general with TN auth list, like with PAs that are they're using essentially this mechanism. But we've never really taken the opportunity to actually enumerate examples based on sort of current practice. So I thought this was a good opportunity to include into this document some of those examples. Maybe there's opportunity to talk about that in the Vesper draft also. But looking for feedback on that. This example is really just a basic thing where you're saying, and part of the reason we did the enhanced JWT claim constraints was to exclude the ability to do things like a test or some of the other claim values that you may not want a delegated party to be able to claim. This is an example of using a very basic RCD, which includes the permitted values, but also has the excluded claim that you shouldn't be making. So looking for feedback on where we think example, if this is useful, where the best place to put these in the Acme draft. Is there something in STIR we should do for that? Is there examples that I don't have that you would like to see? That would be great feedback. But we haven't got official adoption in Acme, but it sort of got a lot of support, and I think we're headed in that direction. So that's good news. So this is for informational purpose, but I'm happy to have any discussion if you have any feedback, or we can chat about it on the list as well. Okay. I think we can move to the next one.
Wait a minute. The first bullet here says you're seeking adoption in Acme,
Right.
right? But you want STIR to review. Is that correct?
Yeah, or be generally aware. I don't know if there's an official mechanism for that. Is that what you're suggesting?
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure
Yes,
I
yes.
interpreted the slide correctly.
Yes, I wanted to make
Because
sure.
the working group then chairs who are going to drive it are in Acme.
Yeah, for those in STIR that aren't paying attention to Acme, I want there to be awareness. And I'm happy to continue to provide that feedback. I probably will. Hopefully that's a good thing.
Okay.
But in the same token, I think hopefully it's a straightforward draft as well and can quickly move through that process. A good pun. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Vesper. We did a, let me go to the next slide. I think actually I don't have many slides, but we're just going to just talk through it. So based on feedback that I got from 122, a lot of feedback from John. I will call him out. But good feedback, and I always appreciate that feedback. We did a very much a wholesale simplification of what we're doing to limit it to the current tools and scope of STIR. I think even in my presentation last time, I did admit we threw a lot of spaghetti on the wall. So we cleaned up a lot of that spaghetti. And I think ended up in a really nice place. The focus of the draft now is really about the use of STIR's tools for delegate certificates with telephone number scope, the specific use of TN-auth lists and JWT claim constraints, and I reference maybe examples might be appropriate there in that document. I do not have them there yet, but I think they should be probably. We do focus on the use of certificate transparency as well for protection of misissued TNs. The thing we do keep, which I think is an important part of the role of the Vesper draft, is to sort of talk about the roles and relationships in terms of how these authority tokens are kept, how the association of the validation of the number assignment and the KYC and vetting that happens for rich call data and other claims that may come in the future happens, and how that's, there's sort of a privacy framework around keeping that maintained with trust, but not necessarily exposing things. So using hash mechanisms, for example, that we have in JWT claim constraints tied to RCDI integrity mechanisms to not expose actual values, but only tie it to hashes can be used. So there's ideas around that are part of that. I'm not necessarily going to call for adoption today because I think I would like to do another round of feedback for sure to make sure we're on the right direction. But I think we are getting a lot closer. But yeah, John.
Yeah, John here to say, Thank you so much. Yes, that's so much better from my perspective. So things that, yeah, I still might look at, since we're just having a very spirited discussion about certificate transparency,
Right.
you know, and as I said, I don't want to go back to requirements phase on that work. But at the same time, I think for this framework, for the overall, I could kind of imagine a more modular way of describing what the requirement is for that support that potentially several mechanisms could plug into, rather than pegging it specifically to CT as it's described in your other specification here.
Right.
But in general, yeah, I think this seems like an interesting and potentially productive way to kind of tie a bow around a bunch of capabilities that we have,
Right.
and to get some kind of, I might even go as far as to say, post-shaken thinking about like how you actually would make this work for enterprises into a good draft here. So I like it.
Awesome. Yes, definitely looking for feedback. Maybe even active participation on this. So leaving the door open on that, but yes, I think we're getting a lot closer, and appreciate the feedback and support. And I don't know if I have another slide, but I guess I do. I think that's probably what I just said. Yep, I pretty much covered that. So maybe that went a lot faster than I thought. I guess we can talk about updates to shaken drafts.
Okay. Not seeing anybody wanting to. I guess they want to see your other your one more rev. All right. I think that's the end of your three presentations, right?
It is.
All right. So let's go back here. Go to the end. So we're in any other business.
Yeah, so I'll quickly talk about, so there was an issue that we got, I think, I forget if it was on the list or I might have gotten direct feedback about that. One of the ATA specs that we reference was no longer available. And that is because ATIS, when we do new version revisions, they remove the reference to the older versions. So obviously that is an issue that we need to resolve. We did work through a potential solution where actually the SIP forum could host, since they also have copyright rights to that. They could host a persistent version of what we agreed to. But I think we also were advocating that we should go through the process of validating the current V3 version, just because it does have some important updates, and make sure everybody's aware of that. And everything's up to date. I'm not going to say there's never going to be another version of that spec, but I think Shaken ecosystem is pretty solid, where any new incremental changes probably should go through some other review, or won't be necessary. So Mary and I submitted a draft. I think she was able to upload it yesterday. So this is just giving everyone a heads up. But I think there was another change, and I'm not remembering what that was off the top of my head, unfortunately. But these are small incremental changes, but we can at least update the document properly to refer to the new version with a persistent link. And I hope, and hopefully that should resolve all the issues we've discussed. So maybe it'd be good to have a discussion about that on the list a little bit and repeat that to introduce that document. But again, hopefully, assuming that we're doing all the right things there, it should be a pretty quick path to.
Go ahead, Ben.
Chris, could you kick off that discussion on the list, please?
I can.
Because I think all the emails have been just between chairs and you and Mary.
Correct. Yeah. I can do that, or maybe Mary wants to. One of us will.
I don't think Mary's in the room to hear it, so
Yes, I will make sure a discussion happens.
Okay, is there any other business? Awesome, then we're done. Thank you.
Nice.